Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be the mid-year book freakout tag. I cannot believe that it's already halfway-ish through 2023. I feel like this tag always sneaks up on me. This time of year always sneaks up on me. So yes, let's just go ahead and get started. It has been a really good reading year for me so far. So I'm very excited to dive into these questions and talk about some of my favorite reads so far this year. So question number one is, what is the best book that you have read so far in 2023? I narrowed it down to two. Again, it's been a really good reading year. So first book I want to talk about is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. She is one of my favorite authors, so it was really not shocking to me that she would be on this tag and this list, but also kind of shocking because this is a departure from her fantasy-centric stories that she's written previously to this one. So highly recommend the audiobook if you're an audiobook reader, because the audiobook to this really adds a lot to the story. I feel the audiobook narrator, Helen Laser, I believe, is wonderful. This is about a white author who steals an unpublished manuscript from her best friend, who's an Asian author who tragically passed away, and she publishes it under a ethnically ambiguous pen name and author photo, and it really just goes downhill or uphill depending on what character you are from there. So this was very funny, very dark, very satirical. Highly enjoyed this one. Second book I also feel like is not going to be a surprise because again, it's from one of my favorite authors, but that would be A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon, and this is the standalone sequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. It is a part of the Roots of Chaos series, which is going to be, I believe, 4 books that you can read them separately. They are standalones, but they are all part of one big world. But I was just so engrossed with this. I never thought that an epic fantasy standalone could top Priory for me. This absolutely did. We're following several different characters in this fantasy world as a dark age is coming, a plague is sweeping across the land, and fire-breathing worms and dragons are appearing and causing chaos. If you like epic fantasy, I mean, if you haven't heard of Priory of the Orange Tree, you're absolutely going to love it. It is a very immensely crafted world. It is a queer normative world, and all of our main characters, this is a fantasy where I love all points of view pretty much equally, and I couldn't not have it as one of my favorite books of the year so far because I absolutely loved it. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far in 2023? That's gonna be Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Boy, have I been waiting such a long time for this sequel to come out. This is the sequel to Ninth House, worth the wait. I honestly think it's an improvement on Ninth House. The characters, the world, the magic building, everything, just the stakes get raised. You love the characters more. I love it. So dark academia, magical dark academia set at Yale, where all the secret societies at Yale are magical societies, and Alex Stern, our main character, is a part of Lethe House, which is the house that makes sure that none of them cause too much chaos, none of them overstep the bounds of their magic, and in this one they are going to hell to save a main character because Alex Stern is determined no one can tell her what she can or cannot do, even if it means bending the rules of her secret society to rescue one of her best friends. Question number 3 is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to? The Battle Drum by Sarah L. Arifi. I loved The Final Strife last year. It was one of my favorite books of last year. I am just currently rereading the first one, so I haven't gotten to the second book in the series yet, but I'm so excited to pick this book up. This is an epic fantasy series about a world where what if the rebellion and the chosen ones, what if that all failed, and different characters have to figure out how to seek justice from a very unethical empire when, you know, the overthrowing plans and the chosen ones kind of missed the boat, missed the mark, and they have to start all over. So that's the premise of the first one. There is like a game aspect, which was really cool. This is the second book. Very excited about it. Cannot wait to pick it up. Question number 4 is, what are your most anticipated releases the second half of the year? And I have such a list, but I would say my top ones so far. Number 1, Bone Season Anniversary Edition. That's not technically a new book, but for the 10th anniversary, Samantha Shannon is re-releasing the Bone Season with added content, and I'm so excited. I love that series, so very much looking forward to that. That's not technically a new new book, I guess. It's an anniversary edition, but I'm very excited for it. I'm also very excited for Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. She's another auto-buy author for me. I don't know what it's about, but I know it's going to be like darker and speculative. That usually tends to be the premises from this author that I love. And then last but not least, there is a new Christopher Paolini book coming out in November, which I'm very excited for as well. So those are probably my top three. I'm sure I've missed one that I'm going to be like editing and being like, why didn't I add that? But yeah, those are some books that I'm really looking forward to that come out in the second half of 2023. The next question is, what has been your biggest disappointment this year? I'm very lucky to say that this was like a hard question for me because nothing immediately sprang to mind. However, one of the books that I have read recently, my expectations were definitely different than my reality of reading it. So Different Seasons by Stephen King. This was not like the biggest disappointment this year by any means, but in the order of the stories that I enjoyed and the ones that I thought I was going to enjoy the most, I ended up enjoying the least. I really thought my favorite story from this short story collection would be The Body, and that ended up being my least favorite in the collection. So I feel like this is a very popular collection of short stories from Stephen King because it does have both Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption as well as The Body, and those I liked them less than the other two stories in here. So not like a disappointment, but just definitely my expectations were very different than my reading experience for this book. Question number 6 is, what has been the biggest surprise to you this year? And that would have to be The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I hadn't heard anything about this. It wasn't on my anticipated releases. It wasn't a book I was expecting to check out this year. However, I went to Barnes & Noble on a very bad mental health day looking for another book, saw this on the very front display, and I like dragons. This cover is beautiful. The sprayed edges are beautiful. I picked it up and I really loved it. This was a lot of fun. This is the start of a new fantasy series. I believe the author said there's going to be at least 5 books in the series, which is pretty cool. And it's following a young woman as she is going through like this dragon rider training academy. So yeah, there is a lot of romance, there is a lot of fantasy. I personally really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and it was like a very addictive read. I pretty much sat down, started it, and didn't stop or pick up another book until I finished, which is very unlike me because I read a lot of different books at the same time, but I really loved this. So that was the biggest surprise to me. The next question is, who is your favorite new author of this year? Either a new author or new to you author, and that would be Mariana Enriquez, who wrote Our Share of Night. This was also a book I considered putting as one of my favorite books of this year, but I figured I'd put it in this slot so I could talk about the author, just because, first of all, I really love this. I'm a big Stephen King fan, and I do not say this lightly because I think his name gets overused in comparisons, but if you like Stephen King style plots, very meandering, descriptive, horror, like just in terms of descriptions and the beautiful descriptions and descriptions of everyday things, pick this book up. I absolutely loved it. There's a lot going on. Primarily, we're following a man and his son as they try to escape a death cult that their family is involved in. It's so good. This author has several things out. This is the first book that I have read by her. Her work, I just have to wait until it gets translated into English before I can pick it up. But I believe she has something else coming out this year that I will be picking up. Definitely a new horror author to me. I'm very excited to pick up another book by this author. Next question is, who is your newest favorite character? And that would have to be Wolf from A Day of Fallen Night. And I do feel like that's kind of weird to talk about the only male point of view character in a whole cast of powerful women. But Wolf is just such, I love his character so much. I love his character's journey so much. I think there's a lot to be said of, if you're familiar with The Lord of the Rings and the very tender, positive, non-toxic masculinity that the main characters in The Lord of the Rings have, Wolf has it. He very much reminds me of one of the main characters. Like, he could be put in the Fellowship. He's very endearing. I loved his character. I loved his character journey. Just, I really enjoy all of the characters, all the main characters in here, but his personal growth and his story's growth were just so cool to read. So definitely Wolf has been one of my favorite characters that I've met this year in fiction. Question number 9 is, what is a book that made you cry? And very easy for me. That would be All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. And I have this book for this prompt for a number of levels. First of all, this book is so hard to read, so devastating. It is a memoir. The things that George M. Johnson had to go through, just, you don't wish that on anyone, especially a child. So the content of this book is just very hard to read. It is an impactful read. Getting some puppy love there. It's very impactful. So the story itself is very tear-jerking. Also, the reason why I read it is because it is one of the books, I am a library worker in Arkansas, it is one of the books that people are challenging at our library. And so, you know, I read it because of that. I wanted to like be as prepared as possible because we knew why it was on their playbook. We knew what they were going to point out and what the people, the Coalition Against the Library, spearheaded by our county's Republican women group. I'm, you know, sure, not all Republicans, it shouldn't be a partisan issue, but it is the Republican group, Republican women group of our county who's spearheading book bans and everything like that. So reading it and knowing why, claiming that it is pornography, that really hurts, as, you know, considering how it is a story that does talk about the sexual assault of the author as a child. Calling that pornography is disturbing to me. Claiming that that is porn and that is not appropriate for kids is horrific. And then also just the fact that it is a queer book by a queer author, and that's just what they're trying to ban in our county. So just like reading it and knowing that it is so challenged for the sheer fact that it's not written by like a white straight man, quite honestly, because I mean, it's a YA memoir. Nothing's written in there for shock value. These things unfortunately happen to children. They happen to people, and people should be allowed to write about their own traumas, and people should be allowed to be whoever they want to be and write a book about their experience, and not get claimed to be a groomer. And that's what's like happening to me and my coworkers, is the fact that we are championing LGBTQ rights and books on puberty and diversity and racism, that we have these books in our library. We're being called pedophiles, we're being called groomers. So just like reading that book in that context also was very emotional for me. I do highly recommend it, especially if you are kind of curious to see like what sorts of things are being challenged in these book bans, because it is a nationwide thing in the United States right now. It's not just local to me and to Arkansas. So if you need a very hard-hitting read, but a book that is, I firmly believe, is going to be considered a modern classic and a classic someday, definitely check out All Boys Aren't Blue. It's very hard. There are trigger warnings at the beginning, so just know that going in, but it is a memoir about this author's life and experiences. Okay. Trying to move on. The next question, a book that made you happy. That's gonna have to be A Court of the Undying Seasons by A.M. Strickland. This was just so much fun. It's a vampire magical school. It's a vampire academy where humans have to compete and learn different vampire skills, go through different trials to earn their place in vampiredom. And at the end, if they are deemed worthy of being a vampire, if they essentially pass all these classes, then they can become a vampire. If not, you know, different fate awaits them. So this was such a fun read. It was so delightful. There are different vampire houses, and just the vampires and the lore and the characters were also fun. This could be like an 8-book series and I would eat it up. I think it's a standalone, but I just absolutely loved it. I love vampires. It definitely feels almost like a mix between the Hunger Games and the Underworld movies. So if you're interested in any of that, my vampire loving heart. This is also, the Vampire Society is very queer normative as well. Pretty much all of our main and side characters are queer, so if you're interested in any of that, highly recommend this book. It just really made me happy. I was grinning the whole time. It was just a lot of fun to read. The next question is, what is the most beautiful book that you have purchased or received this year? And that would have to be A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is the Fairy Elite Special Edition. I did purchase this on Pango because I love this book. And I wasn't the biggest fan of like this recover. I liked the original cover her better. However, the sprayed edges on this, absolutely gorgeous. I love the sprayed edges, as well as the naked hardback is just stunning. So much so that I like consider just kind of having it on my shelf with this and not the dust jacket. I don't know what I would do with the dust jacket though, but like this is gorgeous. And then there is character artwork on the inside that is just absolutely gorgeous as well. And I love this story. I really wanted to buy this special edition. So yeah, definitely like the most beautiful book that I've purchased so far this year. And then the last question on this tag is, what books do you still need to read by the end of the year? I feel like we all see that question and go literally all of them, because all of our TBRs are never ending, but I do have some books. I managed to narrow it down, just the books that I physically have that I really want to read. So for the end of the year, I will hopefully have read all of these. First one is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty, and this one is like a Sinbad retelling, I think, so very excited for that. Also want to read A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. This is a cannibalism book, probably for Summerween. I'm hoping to read this one. Other books that I'd like to read before the end of the year, another Christopher Paolini. This one's Fractal Noise. This is a sci-fi. And then the last, I do want to start this series by Jen Lyons, the first book being The Ruin of Kings. So those are just some of the many, many books I hope to have read by the end of 2023. So that is going to be it for the mid-year book freakout challenge. Definitely let me know if you've done this tag and I'll check it out. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel for all of the reading and cozy gaming content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!